Yes. Yes. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
How are you?
Thank you, Ambassador. But probably because you have a different name that you joined.
You're muted, sir.
Thank you, Takahara Sensei. I'm still going back to my office, stuck in the traffic, but looking forward to your lecture. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, this is going to be your third or fourth time to hear me in a very short period of time. So I'll try not to bore you.
No. Every time it's really exciting, thought-provoking. So high expectation upon your lecture. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, so let us start the program now. Okay, so Assalamu alaikum and good afternoon, everyone. It is great to have you all in today's lecture program of Professor Takahara Akio on Towards a Free and Open Indo-Pacific, its vision, significance, and practices in the Bay of Bengal. This program has been jointly organized by the South Asian Institute of Policy and Governance, SIPG of North-South University, and the Embassy of Japan in Bangladesh. I'm Professor Tawfique Haque, Director of SIPG and CPS, and Chair of the Department of Political Science and Sociology of North-South University. I would like to extend a special welcome to the keynote speaker of today's program, Professor Takahara Akio, Professor, Graduate School for Law and Politics, the University of Tokyo. I warmly welcome our guest of honor, His Excellency Ambassador Ito Naoki, Ambassador of Japan to Bangladesh. And Ambassador joined so many different programs in NSU before. He is a very good friend of us. Despite his busy schedule, he has managed time to be with us. I also want to welcome today's chair of the session, Professor Atiqul Islam, Vice-Chancellor of North-South University, for his kind presence. The Vice-Chancellor is joining within 5 minutes. And I also welcome Dr. Mohammad Jashim Uddin, Associate Professor, Department of Political Science and Sociology and Faculty SIPG and NSU as a discussant today. I welcome all the distinguished audience, diplomats, Japanese delegates, faculty members, academics, researchers, participants, students, and media representatives in today's program. South Asian Institute of Policy and Governance of North-South University is the one and only pioneering institute with a regional focus in Bangladesh. SIPG runs an international master's degree program known as Master in Public Policy and Governance for the young civil servants and professionals from Bangladesh and other South Asian and Southeast Asian countries like Nepal, Bhutan, Sri Lanka, and Malaysia. In 2021, SIPG also commenced a new executive master's in policy and governance for professionals of Bangladesh. Besides research and academic programs, SIPG conducts various training programs too. Recently, we have conducted a series of training programs on enhancing the negotiation skills of civil servants and other professionals for a smooth transition of Bangladesh from LDC graduation. The participants of this training were civil servants, business leaders, and other professionals. The Center for Peace Studies is a specialized center within SIPG, which is an interdisciplinary center of the South Asian Institute of Policy and Governance, and which aims to facilitate the academic study of peace building and the promotion of a resilient society through evidence-based and empirical research at North-South University. Center for Peace Studies is also doing research, holding dialogues, and working on the Rohingya crisis from academic and research points of view. SIPG and CPS faculty members are regularly publishing Scopus Index books, book chapters, and journal articles. We are part of a good number of regional quantitative survey and studies on policy and governance issues of South Asian countries. SIPG and CPS's relations and collaboration with Embassy of Japan in Bangladesh is quite long. Last year, also, we organized a lecture program by Professor Tanaka Akihito on the connectivity in the Bay of Bengal area, challenges and options for Bangladesh. Later on, we published a policy brief on it. This is the policy brief that we publish out of it. And also, we hope that out of today's discussion also, we'll also publish a working paper or a policy brief. SIPG actively engaged with a comprehensive research project on Indo-Pacific strategy led by Brigadier General Saqat Hussain, who is a senior fellow of the institute. Yesterday, also we organized a research talk on geopolitical development in the Indian Ocean. The keynote speaker was Dr. David Brewster, Senior Research Fellow, National Security College, Australian National University. So as an academic institute and as a research organization, we are very much interested to have all kind of discussions in the table and for our students. So whether it is in the Pacific, whether it is Belt and Road, we are doing these things regularly and trying to understand what is the best interest from the Bangladesh perspective. Let me now give an idea about the modality of today's lecture. So we will have the lecture by Professor Takahara Akio, and he will be talking probably 30 to 35 minutes. And then we will have a designated discussion, Dr. Jashim Uddin. He will talk for 10 minutes, and we'll have a 30 minutes question answer session. And I would be very happy to see that our students and faculty and other guests, they will be giving their comments and also raising questions. So we will mostly take the questions in the chat box of the Zoom. So please write your questions in the Zoom. Or if you want to give a live kind of a comment, please raise your hand. I will try to accommodate as much as possible, but I cannot give you the guarantee because of the shortage of time. After question answer session, there will be remarks by Ambassador of Japan to Bangladesh, Ambassador Ito Naoki, and then the Vice-Chancellor of North-South University, he will give his remarks. And after that, we will have a kind of a concluding remarks before we end this session. So now, before I hand it over to our keynote speaker, let me now briefly introduce him. Akio Takahara is Professor of Contemporary Chinese Politics at the Graduate School of Law and Politics and the Graduate School of Public Policy at the University of Tokyo. He received his Doctor of Philosophy in 1988 from Sussex University and later spent several years as visiting scholar at the Consulate General of Japan in Hong Kong, the Japanese Embassy in Beijing, China, Harvard University, Peking University, the Mercator Institute for China Studies, and the Australian National University. Before joining the University of Tokyo, he taught at JF Oberlin University and Ikowo University. He served as the president of the Japan Association for Asian Studies and as the Secretary General of the new Japan-China Friendship 21st Century Committee. Professor Takahara was Dean of Graduate School of Public Policy from 2018 to 2020. He currently serves as Senior Adjunct Fellow of the Japan Institute of International Affairs, a Distinguished Research Fellow of the Japan Forum on International Relations, and Executive Director of JICA Ogata Sadako Research Institute for Peace and Development. His publications in English include The Politics of Wedge Policy in Post-Revolutionary China and Japan-China Relations in Modern Era. So we are very happy to have a scholar like him with us today. And I would now like to invite our keynote speaker, Professor Takahara Akio, to deliver his speech on Towards a Free and Open Indo-Pacific, its vision, significance, and practices in the Bay of Bengal. So, floor is yours, Professor Takahara.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you so much, Professor Tawfique, for the very kind introduction. I have about half an hour to speak at the outset, so let me do that by sharing my slides. You know, now the hot topic, oops, sorry, I should begin from here. The hot topic now is the Party Congress in China. So I can talk about that if you like, if you have any questions about China's diplomacy. This morning, I had a session with Kissinger, Condoleezza Rice, and Bob Gates, and the thing was chaired by Tony Blair. Everyone is so much interested in China nowadays. So my topic today is towards the free and open Indo-Pacific. But the elephant in the room, of course, is China. So and being a China expert, obviously, I shall be touching on the Belt and Road Initiative, which runs parallel, as it were, with the free and open Indo-Pacific vision of Japan. So, but first of all, let me set the context in which I give this talk. We are all worried that the world order is in flux. Aren't we worried? There seems to be an emergence of two-level divisions in the world now. We used to be worried about divisions in our own societies, especially when we look at what's happening in the European nations, in the North American nations. There was Brexit, Trumpism, the result of the midterm elections in 2 weeks' time. I think everyone has a good reason to be concerned about the future of the United States, especially its politics. And we discussed that these internal divisions reflect the effect of globalization. So that's one level of divisions that we are facing. But with China's rise, and as China started to act, especially on the maritime front, and particularly this year when Putin decides to invade Ukraine, we now see an emergence of a big division in the international community, right? Now, why do we put China and Russia together? Because it seems that they are willing to act when they can. That's what we see what China's been doing in the South China Sea and the East China Sea. But another element is that the leaders of the two countries, Xi Jinping and Vladimir Putin, apparently have very identical worldviews. What are they? Putin apparently, this information relies on a Russian friend of mine who was not too far away from where Putin was. And according to his analysis, Putin and people surrounding him, near him, have this kind of a world vision. That is, in democracies, they gave too many rights to the minorities, like the refugees, like LGBTQ people. And that has led to the failure of democracy. This is not my view. My view is completely different. But anyway, Xi and Putin apparently have these kinds of views. And therefore, the world order that's been led by the United States is in crisis because democracy is failing. And now a power transition is occurring from the United States and the European nations, the democracies, to authoritarian countries such as China and Russia, that those countries that have kept these traditional values. They don't like LGBTQs, they don't like refugees. And this transition of power is inevitable. Apparently that's what they think. And they are the ones that will lead the new international order that is emerging in front of us. And the United States on their side is having this very anti-Russia, anti-China sentiment at the moment. And people like President Biden, Speaker Pelosi, both have mentioned that now we are facing a severe competition between autocracy and democracy. Biden held his democracy summit last year, and his message was that we have to cooperate and shore up democracy against autocracy. Now, what's the way forward in this kind of a two-level divisions that we are facing? How can we avoid the deepening of divisions both within our societies and in the international society? I think, to begin with, we should not divide the world into two. It's, let's not take such a binary approach to understanding the situation, because the reality is, even in the days of the Cold War, people used to say that the world was divided into two: the socialist camp led by the Soviet Union, capitalist camp, and the free world led by the United States. But oh, come on, let's be cool-headed and reflect on the situation during the Cold War. There was another world. The world was not divided into two, but there was the third world, right? And that's exactly the situation we are facing today. The majority of the countries belong to what I would like to call the new third world. They don't want to, many countries don't want to take sides. They don't want to side with China, but they don't want to side with the United States. They don't want to choose. And at the same time, many countries want effective development partners, don't we? Of course, we all do. However, we cannot accept aggression. We don't like countries invading other countries. We would rather prefer a rules-based order, of course, especially the smaller countries. For the smaller countries, if there was no rule of law, if there was no rules-based order, then are we going back to the jungles? Are we going back to the imperialist days when the big powers had, their way wherever they went? We don't want that kind of a world to come back. But however, at the same time, we don't like to be preached by the West. Yeah? We don't want to be preached by the former colonizers, telling us that your democracy is not good enough. What happened to your human rights situations? Maybe they're right, but don't come and preach us as if you are our teachers. So in this kind of a situation, what role can Japan play? Japan has a very unique position. It is a nation country. It is a non-European, non-American country, but it is a fine democracy now, and it started modernization earlier than others. And in many ways, it is an advanced country in facing new challenges. Yes, in the Asian region, it was the first country to meet the problem of pollution. And we are now facing, 20 years ago or 30 years ago, we faced the bursting of the economic bubble, the financial crisis came to Japan earlier than other countries. And now the aging of society is one of the problems, very serious issues that we are facing at the moment. And all the neighbors, all the other countries beginning to meet these new challenges that Japan had to face earlier than others. So with this experience, and we fought a war, we fought an imperialist war, and we lost. And all these experiences make the position of Japan rather unique. And I have high hopes that we can make good use of this unique position in the international society and make some contribution to move forward in the direction that many, many countries want to proceed. Okay, so what's the way forward, Japan? I would say the first answer is we need to promote human security. Human security was one of the three major points that Prime Minister Kishida, our Prime Minister, made when he gave a speech at the UN General Assembly in September. So what is human security? I'm sure you have heard about it, but maybe you're not clear about the concept. Human security means we have to protect people's lives, people's livelihoods, and people's dignity, and leave no one behind. It's very simple in a way. No one can be against this philosophy or this principle. People's lives are important. People's livelihoods has to be protected and developed, and people's dignity has to be respected and maintained, right? I don't think anybody can go against that. But then how are we going to achieve this? So our idea is to enhance the resilience of communities by empowering the people, and we have to develop institutions in societies and countries, and also the infrastructure that is necessary to protect people's lives, livelihoods, and dignity. So development assistance, development cooperation, that JICA, where I also belong now, have been trying to promote in many of our friendly countries. We sort of base our activities on this very important principle that we all need to cooperate and promote human security all over the world. But it's not enough, actually, because we see the invasion of Ukraine undermining people's human security in a very brutal way. And in countries where there's civil war, there could be violent extremism, all sorts of problems are happening in many countries, which in my view is based on the lack of a mechanism of check and balance of power. So abuse of power, when that happens, people's human security can be undermined very easily. We need rule of law, but how do you, secure rule of law in order to make the power holders abide by law? Or you have to have a mechanism of check and balance of power. Without that, you just cannot rely on the goodwill of the person who dominates power. I think that's unfortunately is the rule that we all understand. So with this basic concept of human security, we must unite different nations, we must unite societies, we must unite the world. And we should try not to divide the people, not to divide societies and divide the world. That's the basic point that I would like to make, the first way forward. What's the second way forward? Now comes the free and open Indo-Pacific. The basic idea of FOIP, as we call it, is to extend the stability and prosperity. Yeah, that's good. Prosperity of East Asia to South Asia and West Asia and Africa, because we find those regions, South Asia, West Asia, and Africa, we find those regions as those with big economic potential. And the Indian Ocean, the Pacific Ocean provide very important sea lanes for our prosperity also. So the security of the sea lanes, peace in the region is crucial to the peace and prosperity of East Asia too. And in order to achieve this, we have to realize many values. One is openness, transparency, inclusiveness, rules-based framework, respect for international law. All these things are necessary to make sure that stability and prosperity prevails in the Indo-Pacific region. Now, the idea originated in the late Prime Minister Abe. In his first administration in 2007, he gave a speech in Delhi and talked about the confluence of the Pacific and the Indian Oceans. He said the Pacific and the Indian Oceans are now bringing about a dynamic coupling as seas of freedom and of prosperity. And when he returned to power in 2012, he began to develop this concept. And when the TICAD, the Tokyo International Conference on African Development, TICAD was held in Kenya, he flew there and gave a speech and said Japan bears the responsibility of fostering the confluence of the Pacific and Indian Oceans and of Asia and Africa into a place that values freedom, the rule of law, and the market economy, free from force or coercion, and making it prosperous. So, okay, the principles are set. No one can oppose this, right? Then how do you achieve this? The three pillars that uphold FOIP, according to the Japanese government, we have these three pillars. One is the commitment for peace and stability. Second is the promotion and establishment, rule of law, freedom of navigation, free trade. And third is pursuit of economic prosperity. All right. And in concrete, what we have been doing JICA, the Japan International Cooperation Agency, what we've been doing in Bangladesh in the area of maritime safety and security to begin with include the following. We have training programs on many items: maritime safety, security policy, maritime law enforcement, search and rescue, disaster prevention, environmental protection, ship safety, hydrography for charting and disaster management. So we provide training on all these fronts. So all these specific programs are implemented by the Japanese government through JICA. That's one. And also not only the technical training, but we provide aid, grant aid, and loans for vessels. These are some examples that we've been cooperating with the Bangladesh government. We provide vessels for patrol and rescue. We have provided vessel traffic service, laser camera system, communication systems, etc., lighthouses and buoy systems. So that's one area that specifically we do in the Bay of Bengal. And in other areas, we have a lot of programs that you may know. If you are interested, the JICA Bangladesh office has its homepage, and you can take a look at the YouTube that explains or introduces to you all the projects that JICA has been conducting to help our Bangladeshi friends. And this is, I would say, a very important part of how we achieve safe and prosperous Indo-Pacific. So Bangladesh, as a linchpin of the Indian Ocean at the facing the Bay of Bengal, is a very important partner for Japan in promoting the Indo-Pacific vision that we have. Then how does that relate to the Belt and Road Initiative, the BRI? What is the BRI? The Belt and Road Initiative, no one can define this very clearly. Even the Chinese, you ask a Chinese, what is the BRI? And the answers are all very different depending on who is answering. But it sounds very nice, doesn't it? The Belt and Road Initiative, the Silk Road of the 21st century. It sounds so grand, romantic. So I would say the concept is a diplomatic and political genius. It has a lot of traction, and I liken it to an attractive constellation. The bright yellow word is constellation. I deliberately used bright yellow so that it's difficult for you to see because I asked this question when I talk about this. Is there anybody who has ever seen a constellation, a real one? I don't think anybody has, because constellations don't exist, right? What exists in reality, what are tangible, are the stars. So in this case, it's the projects. But there are so many projects that the Chinese are involved in. So Xi Jinping points at the sky, points at the stars and says, look at all the stars, all the projects. You see a dragon there. That's the Belt and Road Initiative. And we all go, wow, how nice. And our eyes are glittering with renminbi, Chinese money. So we should not be mesmerized. We should not be dazzled by the constellation. And what we should be doing is to look at each star, each project. And when the star is a good one, when the project is a good one, we can cooperate. And when it's not, then we can leave it. And if I am pressed to define the Belt and Road Initiative, I would define it as the symbol of Xi Jinping's power and authority in the world. So the Chinese become very happy when we praise the Belt and Road Initiative, because Xi Jinping, it's a signature project of Xi Jinping's. So one way Mr. Abe, the former prime minister, succeeded in improving Japan-China relations was he said very clearly in 2017 that Japan can cooperate with the Belt and Road Initiative. Japan would like to cooperate with the Belt and Road Initiative if the project met 4 conditions. That's what he said. What were the conditions? First, the project has to be transparent. Many Chinese investment projects are not so transparent. But if the project is transparent, we can cooperate. And if it's an open project, you know, not an exclusive one that is only for Chinese enterprises, but if the project is open and if it is economically viable, you know, economic efficiency or bankability is a very important condition for cooperation. And also, it does not undermine the fiscal soundness of the recipient nation. You know, all the talk about debt trap and so on. But if the project is not going to disturb the fiscal soundness of the recipient nations, if the project met all those 4 conditions, Japan's willing to cooperate. And this really resonated in the minds of Xi Jinping, apparently, and led to the very successful visit by Prime Minister Abe in 2018 to Beijing, China. You know, many countries, many people misunderstand that Japan and China are always fighting with each other, always quarreling, always bickering. That's not true. There are 2 aspects. I will tell you a bit more about that in a few minutes' time, but Japan and China cooperate a lot, actually. So there are 2 aspects in Japan-China relations, but also there are 2 aspects in FOIP. There are 2 aspects in the Belt and Road Initiative, each of them. What do I mean? It has the strategic aspect. Yeah, we cannot deny that there is a strategic competition in the Indo-Pacific region if we focused on the security issues between China on the one side and US and its allies on the other. So if we've only focused on that aspect, there's only competition. But the other side, the other aspect of FOIP, the other side of BRI is economic cooperation, isn't it? So if we focused on that side, there is room for cooperation. And, you know, the Chinese these days are worried about the free and open Indo-Pacific strategy of the United States. For example, on the 4th of February this year, Russia and China jointly issued a statement, a very long joint statement, and in it, the Indo-Pacific, the free and open Indo-Pacific is criticized, but it's clearly stated that what's criticized is the American version of the free and open Indo-Pacific strategy. And that's deliberate because the Chinese know that the Japanese want to emphasize the economic cooperation aspect of it. Of course, the strategic competition aspect is there, but the Japanese would put on the forefront the economic cooperation side of things, and Abe has clearly said that BRI and FOIP can cooperate. I mean, he didn't put it that way, but Japan can cooperate with the BRI. So the Chinese are keeping this room for cooperation with the Japanese version of the free and open in the Pacific. We don't call it the free and open in the Pacific strategy anymore. At the outset, we called it that way. Then we changed to the free and open in the Pacific vision. Now the vision's gone. We just call it the free and open in the Pacific. But the Chinese understand why Japan is changing names, and they would like to cooperate with Japan when the conditions are ripe. Okay, so for 2 constellations, because FOIP is also like a constellation, right? What's important are the concrete project, as I was trying to tell you. But for 2 constellations to share a star, share a project, you know, we do it jointly, and they can call it, it's part of BRI, we call it, it's part of FOIP, no problem whatsoever. So that's the basic idea of my argument that FOIP and BRI are compatible. However, the problem is what the Chinese say and what the Chinese do can be very different. You know, many countries are facing this problem about this gap between China's words and China's deeds. Their words usually are very soft. You know, I brought here one example about the South China Sea. When Xi Jinping visited Jakarta in 2013. He gave a speech at the Indonesian Parliament, and he talked about the South China Sea. And the words are so nice, you know, with regard to differences, disputes. Peaceful solutions should be sought. Differences, disputes should be properly handled through equal-footed dialogue, friendly consultation, etc., etc. That's fantastic if they did it that way, actually. But in fact, the actions are very hard, not soft at all. They send patrol boats to areas, you know, contested. They constructed man-made islands in the South China Sea, and there's an increase in the friction that the Chinese vessels make with other countries' vessels, etc., etc., etc. So this gives us a thought that we all must study China well. We cannot just judge China by what they say. At the party congress, Xi Jinping once said so many things. You know, he has talked about the global development initiative, the global security initiative. It sounds good. Everything sounds good, too good. It's like a dream. But what's important for us is the concrete deeds. Yeah, we have to observe very carefully, not only what the Chinese say, but even more what the Chinese actually do. Because this is what we faced 10 years ago. When the Japanese government decided to purchase some of the Senkaku Islands, you know, which the Chinese started to claim in 1971. Before that, all the maps in China, printed in China, had the words Senkaku. But after they started claiming in December 1971, of course, they have to change their maps. But anyway, for us, it was a sudden thing. And ever since, both sides have tried to contain this issue, this difference in understanding. But the Chinese started to act, and one result is this: they can be very violent. The Chinese society is rather violent, so we have to be careful. And you know about the dredging in the South China Sea. By the way, the dredging destroyed a lot of coral reefs. But in fact, at that time, no international environmental NGO made protests against China. I don't understand why didn't they do that. But the international court, you know, the arbitral court in The Hague, when they came up with their judgment in 2016, they did talk about environmental destruction, and I thought that was fair to point out. And the problem of self-perception, because China is a big country, not only China, but many big powers have what I call the big power syndrome. It's hard for them to objectively observe oneself and make a judgment about how other countries would perceive them. You know, one example is China calls its neighborhood diplomacy peripheral diplomacy. I tell my Chinese friends, you shouldn't call your neighborhood diplomacy peripheral diplomacy. And my friends always ask me, why? Why is that the case? And I point out, if you call your neighborhood diplomacy peripheral diplomacy, you're implying that you are the center. And they all go, wow, yeah, you're right. We should change the name. And another example, Xi Jinping always, in many occasions, he likes to talk about DNA. The blood of the Chinese nation does not contain the DNA to invade others and become a hegemon. Oh, come on. Zhou Enlai, the former prime minister, was more honest. He told Kissinger that, oh, yes, we have invaded Koreans, we have invaded the Vietnamese, but we are peaceful now, you know. But anyway, he shouldn't say these things because the Chinese will start to believe this is reality. And Zheng He, or Chong Ho, a great admiral in the early 15th century, he was an admiral that led this huge fleet of huge Chinese boats in the early 15th century, went to Southeast Asia, even to South Asia, and even to Africa. And the Chinese are calling him the peaceful maritime messenger, unlike the colonial barbarous Europeans who made so many their colonies and who made so many people their slaves. But Chong Ho was a peaceful mission. But when I went to Sri Lanka, I saw in the National Museum that a display saying that they were invaded by Zhongho. And apparently Zhongho's mission was to persuade the kingdoms in that area to join the tributary system, to have the Chinese emperor as their emperor, and the emperor will give them a lot of goodies. But this very proudful king refused to join the tributary system, and Zhongho got very angry, attacked the kingdom, captured the king and his family and took them away to China. So this has happened apparently in other countries too. But the Chinese refused to accept those historical facts. So how should we deal with China? I have 5 more minutes left, I think. So coming towards the end of my talk, Japan has adopted a 2-pronged approach. We don't want to, but we have to compete with China on certain fronts. Especially we are now threatened by their maritime advancement. They are attempting, in reality, they're attempting to change the status quo by physical force. They keep on sending their Coast Guard vessels to the inside the territorial waters around the Senkakus, what they call 𝐏𝐤𝐢𝐿. This is unacceptable. This is not a peaceful way of solving issues with your neighbors. So we have to increase the budget of our self-defense forces and coast guards. Our fiscal deficit is very big, so we don't really want to do this, but there's no other choice to do that and to reinforce our alliance with the United States and other countries, and assist the capacity building of friends who are also facing this problem. More assertive or even aggressive China. But as I mentioned, we do a lot of cooperation with China on the economic front, RCEP, the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. Now we have a kind of an FTA, a free trade agreement with China. And in the area of non-traditional security, there's an anti-piracy operation off the coast of Eden. And environmental protection cooperation, anti-drug trafficking, anti-COVID, health and sanitation cooperation, a lot of cultural exchange. We have a lot of Chinese students that come to our universities. So, we have to cooperate and compete at the same time. And this reflects the 2 aspects in Japan-China relations. We have the fragile aspect, the security issues, the island issues, the history issues. We have a lot of fragile aspects, but at the same time, there's much resilience in Japan-China relations. So even though the relationship goes down, it will eventually bounce back to a certain stage. But then the fragile issues will take over, and the relationship goes down again, and it comes up. So this kind of a cycle emerges, and I have an appendix about perception gaps between the Japanese and Chinese. I shall send this set of slides to you, and the students can have a look at them. And I talk about how these perception gaps are caused by the information gap. Like when the trawler collision incident happened in September 2010, this is what the Chinese people got. One day after the collision, Xinhua somehow told an artist to draw this picture, and this was carried by many, many newspapers in China. Unfortunately, I have the URL here, but you cannot see this anymore. They've taken it away because over 10 years have passed, but this was put up on the website for a very, very long time. So this is the Chinese version of the collision, but the Japanese have a completely different idea. This is the Japanese version. This YouTube can be watched even now, so you can watch it if you're interested, and you see that this is a complete political fabrication, and this is what actually happened. But on the Japanese side, well, I have a lot of examples of misperception and information gap. I don't think I have more time to go into details, but please take a look. I will send it to you. So let me stop here. Thank you so much for your patience.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor Takahara, and very fascinating kind of a discussion, and the way you started the presentation, that with a big picture of the whole world, and starting from the uncertainties that we are seeing in Europe and this Russia-Ukraine, and then we are having this Taiwan situation and how it has been affecting. So these all incidents are now, because we are so connected now, and especially small states like Bangladesh, we are so worried about this big powers game. We are the middle powers, and we are seeing it like that. This is a very, very dangerous situation for us because big powers are willing to see that we are taking sides, either or our situation. And you rightly said that this new, if you use that term, the new third world countries, they don't want to go with this bloc politics. And absolutely, that's the situation in Bangladesh. The people, we want to see that the China and Japan and India, they cooperate more than compete, and so that we can have a more peaceful life. Because of this big powers confrontation, as a middle power, we are having suffocated. So these are the fascinating discussion you brought about, and very interesting that you brought about China-Japan cooperation and the history that you put into place, and also the strategy that you are saying. We had a same kind of interesting discussion yesterday when Dr. David Brewster of Australian National University was talking about that there is a misconception about this whole Indo-Pacific strategy, and he was arguing that there are so many Indo-Pacific strategy, and that's not only one, but in Bangladesh and many other South Asian countries, we only believe that there is a single Indo-Pacific strategy led by USA. But as you are mentioning that Japan's Indo-Pacific strategy is different from USA because it's more on economic side and also the developmental side. So so many interesting topics came, and I'm sure that our faculty members and students probably will ask questions. We are also having some already questions in the chat box, but let us go first to our designated discussant, Dr. Jashim Uddin. Let me introduce him. Dr. Jashim Uddin is an associate professor of Department of Political Science Sociology. He was the founding coordinator of the Center for Peace Studies at SIPG. Dr. Jashim Uddin was a visiting fellow at JICA in 2015. He received his PhD in International Public Policy from Osaka University in 2005. He received the Best Award for his PhD dissertation at Osaka University. He has published several book chapters and scholarly articles on peace and conflict resolution, interstate relations, and refugee issues in peer-reviewed journals, including SAGE. He served as a senior research fellow for 9 years at the Bangladesh Institute of International and Strategic Studies, BIS, affiliated to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Bangladesh government. His research interests include refugee studies, governance issues, conflict management, peacekeeping, human security, interstate relations, Japan, SAARC, and China-South Asia relations. So over to you, Dr. Jashim. You will have 10 minutes time.
Thank you very much, Professor Tawfique. The moderator of the session, Professor Tawfique, Honorable Chair of the session, Professor Atiqul Islam, His Excellency Ambassador Naoki, distinguished keynote speaker, Professor Takahara, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen, my colleagues, students, assalamu alaikum, very good afternoon. Thank you very much, Professor Takahara, for your nice presentation and sharing your thoughts with us. Actually, I got your PPT this morning, and I've tried to go through it, and I'll try to do justice to your arguments and thoughts you have shared with us. But at the very outset, actually, I would like to say, since you have started with the ideological clash, democracy versus authoritarianism, my first question is, who is responsible for this Russia-Ukraine war? Is it Russia? Is it only Russia? Any kind of aggression against a smaller neighbor, violating their sovereignty, is not accepted because it violates the UN resolution. We live in a civilized world, not in a jungle. So therefore, people actually consider the both sides of the coins. And people raise question, was it absolutely necessary to expand NATO up to the Russian border? And you see, we even heard that Russia wanted to join NATO. Because of this war, people across the world are suffering, and more sufferings are coming. And it is, I mean, there are some strong indications that people may face famine. So who are responsible for this? Anyway, the focus of this discussion, today's, topic is a free and open Indo-Pacific and its vision, significance, and practice in the Bay of Bengal. Well, I will try to share some of my logical arguments and conclusion. This is purely academic. However, actually, as an academic perspective, when I see the title, I feel like I haven't found much of its practice of these, free and open in the Pacific in the above. Your larger portion of your presentation focus on Japan-China bilateral disputes in South China and East China Sea. And the word China is actually missing in the title. It is my perception. However, we all are aware about the significance of the Indian Ocean. You know, Professor, that Robert Kaplan in his book Munson mentioned the water of the Indian Ocean will determine the fate of the nations in the 21st century. So how significant of the ocean is. And in the Indo-Pacific region, we see the littorals of the Indian Oceans are given actually priority. And the Indian Ocean is considered the lifeline of the international trade and commerce. And definitely it is vital, especially for the energy. It's a vital route for the energy. And who knows better than us, better than Europeans, how important the energy is. You see, Europeans realize even more in this winter how energy can impact their lives. So ultimately, energy security has become a national security concern. And perhaps it is not exaggeration if someone said that this energy crisis can ultimately disintegrate the garden. You know what I mean. So, as you rightly said, that Indo-Pacific is a very vital region. The other day, Secretary of the State Blinken mentioned. I found in a newspaper that the trade and commerce was almost 3 trillion in this region. So ultimately, we understand the security and stability of this region is really vital. And the littorals of the Indian Ocean, of the Bay of Bengal, including India, Bangladesh, are increasingly becoming a more important actor. But Professor, one thing I found in your speech and most of the Japanese scholars and your allies, that you always stress on 2 concepts, free and open Indo-Pacific and rule-based international order. But sometimes these concepts are actually confusing, as they are nebulous or unclear, although they are very catchy phrases. Of course, Indo-Pacific region must be free and open to all. And as per the international law, all nations must access and should have free navigation. I think there is no country, no nation, they are against a free and open Indo-Pacific, if you refer to Indo-Pacific oceanic region. So, but however, I salute to late Prime Minister Abe for his this idea that he reminds the nation that this ocean, this seas must be free and open. We don't expect any unipolar actor, either Japan, China or US is not. Their dominations is not actually accepted. So in this regard, question may be raised. If it is free and open, then why is China singled out? How come the biggest country in the region excluded? Did you offer China to join FOIP or Biden's Indo-Pacific economic framework? So, Professor, concepts in international relations, in international politics played a very important role. Political scientists, professors, and philosophers, they have contributed to the civilizations through various innovative ideas, thoughts, and concepts. But there are exceptions. For example, the preemptive strike. I think you are aware of preemptive strike. That is responsible for the destruction of Iraq. Thousands of people have been killed there. Who are responsible for this? So ultimately, you see, when you bring the issue of autocracy and democracy, and we see that democracies are actually responsible something that is unexplained, then definitely question comes. I mean, life in Ukraine, of course, is important, as well as it is important in Iraq. So that actually we need to understand, I feel. So, and the second actually, the concept you brought, like rules-based international order. So what is actually this rules-based international order? I searched and I found that actually it focuses on democracy, human rights, rule of law. So now we ask ourselves that some of the supporters of these, concepts, they are actually violating, this rule of law and minority rights or human rights. So how to explain that? So, and your FOIP is a value-based foreign policy. But what does this rule-based international order mean to Rohingya people, or people living in Palestine who are refugees in their own land, or Iraqi people? Because it's value-based. I understand that, you say, rule-based is the transparency, rule of law, and etc. So ultimately, one may ask question, does Japan have a concrete policy towards Rohingya? Thank you that you are giving some aid, humanitarian aid to Rohingya people. But you see, regarding the genocide, regarding the ethnic cleansing, it is not what I'm saying. Human Rights Watch, they mention that Japan has abstained from all Myanmar-related resolutions at the UN. So we all know that an authoritarian regime can support the military junta there, who are responsible for genocide, who are responsible for ethnic cleansing, and make people stateless. But people ask, okay, what's the role of Japan? What's the role of India as democracy? Because they follow rules-based international order.
Dr. Jashim, 2 minutes more.
So, so ultimately, I think that before I go to Japan-Bangladesh relations and cooperation, let me say that this rules-based international order definitely exclude authoritarianism. And you are concerned about democracy and democratic values, but sir, if you're a student, if our student asks you, then so why do you have a large volume of trade with China? I found that in 2021, China remains Japan's biggest trade partner. And because of my curiosity, I searched further and I found all Quad members, the 4 Quad members, China has been the largest trade partner of these Quad members. So ultimately, Professor, one may ask, like the business and interests come first, and values and democracy or rule of law comes later, right? So I leave you with some questions. What is the nature of FOIP? Is it an economic framework so that other countries can join? If it has any security or, defense dimension, why should Bangladesh join FOIP? at the cost of Bangladesh relation with China, when China emerged as the largest trade partner of Bangladesh. And the last question here that you raised in your, is talk about star and constellations, very fascinating. Is it that simple and straightforward that these two constellations, BRI and FOIB, can work together when they have, security or defense dimension? So, and how effective is Biden's IPEF? These are some questions I actually like to hear. I think Bangladesh should not be sided with any bloc. The basis of our foreign policy is friendship to all, malice to none. And that we have been maintaining for long. And, China and India are winning Bangladesh to be sided, but based on our foreign policy, we're trying to. And of course, we should get lesson from Ukraine. Bangladesh has already joined BRI and reaping the economic benefits. Bangladesh joined BRI just for economic purpose, as many other countries joined. Bangladesh can join Indo-Pacific or specifically FOIB or IPF if it gets economic benefits too. So,
okay, Dr. Jashim.
Just 2 more minutes I would like to get. You talked about maritime cooperation. I think that Bangladesh-Japan relations are very important. And there is much to learn from Japan. Since Japan is advanced in technology, Japan can help us a lot in extracting our maritime resources and fishes. Finally, I would like to say that, as you rightly point out at the outset, that human security is the way forward. Human security defines free from fear, free from hunger, free from want. And of course, dignity, as Kofi Annan added in this definition. And I think Japanese people, we don't want war. Japanese people, they don't war. They hate war. They hate nuclear. So, and as you mentioned in your slide, that majority of the people even didn't like visiting Yosukuni Shrine. So Japan, with his ideology and capacity, can play a very significant role in promoting global peace. Thank you very much for your patience hearing.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Jashim, for a very insightful discussion and raising so many questions before our audience get a chance to ask questions. So, Professor Takahara, is it okay if we open the floor now and take questions, few, and then come back to you? Is it okay?
No problem.
Okay, so I can see that some of the questions are already in the chat box. One from our Director of Research, Professor Norman Swajo. His question is, rather than speak of a new third world, why not rehabilitate the concept and practice of a non-alignment along with a revision of the UN Security Council to abolish permanent membership? Is it clear, the question, Professor Takahara? Okay. We have another question from our Dean, School of Humanities Social Science. Dean is here, and I can see that the question is, between democracy and autocracy or dictatorship, where would you put nominally democratic but in reality highly autocratic countries? So that's again, this a kind of a theoretical question. I can just go for, okay, we can see a hand raised by Brigadier Sakwat, who is our senior fellow at SIPG and doing also a research on Indo-Pacific. Brigadier Sakwat, you can unmute yourself and you can give your comments or question, sir, within 3 minutes, please, because we have so many other hands being raised.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tawfique, and thank you very much, Professor. It was definitely illuminating talk from an expert like you. But sir, I have a long comment, but I'll make it very short. As Dr. Jashim has talked about, and probably he has also raised the same question that which I'm going to raise, is that if you read Brzezinski and his global great chess board, where he clearly says that America has to occupy the Eurasian abide by the Eurasian concept by Nicholas Seidman. And that's what we see, what is happening in Ukraine. The whole of Europe, if whole of Europe would be suffering because this war is not going to end. And not only Europe, countries like ours is also suffering. And time to come that we're going to suffer. And when we talk about Eurasia, you understand, Professor, I don't have to explain, which extends up to Australia. And if a domination of Eurasia is what, as Brzezinski said, as Dr. Henry Kissinger advocated, and what we see, what the Americans and the others are doing. Now, in that view, and the role of India, of course, India is with the Quad and also not with the Quad. So in such situation, we in Bangladesh, how do you think that we can swim across this dichotomic sort of a concept that is brought by Quad? I'm not talking about. I'm also very apprehensive, except in history, China so far has not occupied or acted as any colonial power, like, for example, Imperial Japan, for Britain, even the America. So under such circumstances, a country like Bangladesh is very much in fix. And we have to really watch and see what Quad means altogether, though BRI has not been that, I don't think BRI has shown its intention of being expansionist in that way so far. So we have to really watch how this development comes in Europe and how the Eurasia is conceptually is taken by the American hegemon. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So we go back to Professor Takahara now, and then after getting some responses, we'll come back to the audience again. Professor Takahara.
Well, thank you so much, first of all, Dr. Jashim, for your wonderful comments, and thank you also for the lovely questions that were posed to me. I think my impression is to Dr. Jashim, what sort of caused concern was my idea about the rules-based order, free and open, these concepts, democracy, human rights, and how do you live in this world with those values and the reality that we cannot solve all the problems, and we have to deal with a non-democracy like China in a big way. Isn't that contradictory? And I would say, yes, it is a contradiction. And now is the time that many countries have to live with this contradiction. There's no choice. Is it a good idea to decouple with China? Just because China is not a democracy, just because China is making so much problems, causing so much problems in the East China Sea and the South China Sea and so on and so forth? No, that's not realistic. So for some people, even in Japan or the United States, my idea of a two-pronged approach to compete and cooperate at the same time, psychologically, it's difficult to accept. You have to be either very pure or very dirty. But in reality, we are all contradictory, aren't we? We love animals, but we eat animals. Well, many of us do at the same time. So we need the wisdom, we need the resilience to live with this contradiction and maintain peace. That's the basic value for all of us. How can we maintain peace when China and Russia, especially, if we go back a bit, there's Iraq, there's Libya, all these big powers, their abuse of power. This is the reality that we are facing, but at least at least in the Indo-Pacific, that's what we think. Of course, it's better to have peace all over the world, but how can we maintain peace? And for the Japanese, the immediate issue is the rise of China. We helped China's rise. Yeah, we provided a lot of ODA. Now, how many companies, Japanese companies, are there in China? We cooperate a lot, and as long as politics don't come in, our relations are fantastic. But at the same time, with the rise in their national power, they have started to act. The Chinese Communist Party is a believer in power. They believe in power and money. So for some people in China who envisage a Pax Sinica, it's just an extension of Pax Communista. That's how I call the internal order in China today, because there's no rule of law in China. There's no law and order, but the order in China is supported by the outstanding power of the Chinese Communist Party. And for example, the issue with Japan, they send these vessels very close to the islands that we administer. And what did the Chinese say? Oh, you get used to it. You know, oh, we are not going to stop. You have to get used to our use of power, because that's what we are going to do. That's what we can do now. And we are doing it because we are saying that those islands are ours now. You know, and even some Chinese academics have started to discuss that Okinawa could be part of China. And those articles are published on the website of the People's Daily. Oh, come on. You know, you have to have rules. And it's true that rules are not perfect. And sometimes or many times big powers don't abide by the rules, but it doesn't mean that rules mean nothing, right? Especially for the smaller countries, as I said. It's very important that we all join our voices and tell the big powers when they don't abide by the rules that you have to abide by the rules. You know? Oh, and that's what, you know, the problem that all the Chinese neighbors on the maritime front are facing at the moment. So we have to persevere and maintain peace until when? For how long? Until China changes. The discussion now in the United States apparently is that China is not going to change. So we have to have a very tough stance against China. But for a person like me, a China expert for the past 40 years, come on, hasn't China changed in the past 40 years? Of course, it has changed very much. And the Chinese people have changed very much. And only the Chinese people can change China. So what can we do? We can assist, we can support the Chinese people change themselves. We should have them more come over to our countries and share values with us. But it takes time because there are 1.4 billion people living in China. So all sorts of means should be mobilized to maintain peace, including realistic thinking, including liberal thinking and constructivist thinking. Everything has to be mobilized. That's how I think. And non-alignment, yes, if there's going to be a movement like in the 50s and the 60s, I think there is a lot of hope if there are countries that would lead the way for the new third world to unite and have a joint voice. I think that could be a lot, very much welcomed by the people who would like to see more justice realized in this world, you know, which is in flux. So we need another voice. And if the new non-alignment movement can emerge and can play that role, I think that's going to be fantastic. On Quad, Quad is different from AUKUS. You know, Quad has two aspects also, just like the free and open in Indo-Pacific. My hunch is Quad will emphasize more like the Japanese version of FOIP, the cooperation side of things. At least that's how India wants it to go. Because Indians are very, very clever. They use different frameworks, regional frameworks in dealing with China. You know, they are a member of BRICS. They are a member of now the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. And when Modi attends those meetings, he waves his hand at Xi Jinping when they are so fiercely facing each other in the Himalayas, right? So we also need to make good use of this variety of regional frameworks that already exist now. Since, as I said, we need to live with this contradiction with a country like China, which has two faces. So we have to compete with China using certain frameworks, and we have to cooperate with China using others. And this is the reality. So, you know, we are not angels. We cannot solve everything, but let's do what we can do and maintain peace and try to not, you know, let the divisions of the world develop. We have to unite. There are so many issues that need our cooperation. Yeah, we need to work together on climate change, on COVID, what have you. That's how I feel. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So we have a few more hands raised, and go to Dr. Raymond first, and then Professor Nuruzzaman, and then Professor Mahbub, and we'll get 2 minutes each. Have to be very brief. So start with Dr. Raymond. Can you unmute, Dr. Raymond?
Hello. Okay. Am I audible?
Yeah.
Yes.
Visible?
Yes.
Hi. Good afternoon, everyone, professors. So first of all, thank you very much, Professor Takahara, for giving us this very thought-provoking and a very interesting presentation. So I have just benefited and learned a lot again from your insightful analysis. By the way, my name is Raymond Now. I'm here working as an assistant professor of political science here at North-South University since August last year. 私は香港人です。
係係，我係日本哥哥啊，我係日本人。
That's amazing. So anyway, but since your presentation topic today is entitled Towards the Free and Open Indo-Pacific, its vision, significance, and practice in the Bay of Bengal. So actually, I think I would like to ask 3 questions, okay, which are related to Japan and the Bay of Bengal. I mean, first of all, there is no denying the fact that I think Japan could be considered as the very first country, I mean, to use this term Indo-Pacific. Okay, while the free and open Indo-Pacific concept was first like advocated by the then Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe in his during his attendance again at this 6th Tokyo International Conference on African Development in Kenya. So yeah, so I mean, yeah, but questions are 3 questions, a quick one. The first question that I would like to ask is, what national interest does Japan have in the Bay of Bengal? Yeah, the second question is, what is the official or stated Japanese national security strategy pertaining to the Bay of Bengal? Okay, and the third one is, in your opinion, what are some of the policy recommendations for a response, okay, to China's growing presence, growing activism in the Bay of Bengal? So these are my 3 questions.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Dr. Raymond. We go to now Professor Nuruzzaman. Professor Nuruzzaman, please unmute yourself. 2 minutes, please.
Thank you, Professor Tawfique Haque, for giving me the opportunity. I would like to make 2 important points, and actually the points may be put as comments and questions at the same time. So, Professor Takahara, you have talked about Japan's role in the Indo-Pacific region, and the way you have projected the role is very good. But you know that Japan, like other colonial European powers, even the US, have a very, very aggressive historical past. It invaded Manchuria in 1937, kept Taiwan, formerly called Formosa, under its control for a long time. Now you have come up with some kind of a peaceful strategy, but why other countries should be really persuaded that you would not be a different kind of power, like the US or any other power, and every rising power comes up with its own slogan. Americans are using the slogan of human rights, freedoms. Chinese are talking about peaceful resolution, mutually beneficial cooperation, etc., etc. And you have now come up with the slogan of human security and then free and open Indo-Pacific. How is your strategy really different from the other powers of the day? And how would you really convince with a very aggressive historical past? Because we know that at some point of the Second World War, Japan came close to invade South Asia. It already took control of Myanmar, previously called Burma. So I think that we should be really more scared of Japan, not China. We have much more business relations, investment relations, economic relations with China, and we find them really peaceful. There is no possibility that China is coming to invade us at any time in the future. And secondly, you talked about your own strategy, and at the same time try to explain why China is scared of the Indo-Pacific strategy. And unfortunately, you did not really reveal the truth here, the realities. We know that energy security, trade security is very, very important for China, as is the case with Japan, India, the US, and other European powers, because most of the international trade currently being conducted through the sea lanes of the Indian Ocean. And you know that the US has a military base in Diego Garcia. It has military naval bases close to the Malacca Strait. And India has also set up a military base in Singapore, Changi military base there. So I see that the Chinese factor is being used by India, Japan, US, Australia, just to promote and control the whole of the Indian Ocean, while denying China any possibility of coming to the Indian Ocean. So it's not that, in fact, China's rise is actually promoting your interest, because you can use that as a strategic factor to not only to suppress China, but also to establish your total control over the Indian Ocean waters and the Pacific Ocean as well. So okay. I know that there is some kind of propaganda. So what your country, US and others are doing are actually propaganda, like in the name of a fight between democracy and authoritarianism. That's not true, right? We can paint it ideologically, but the fact is that it's a struggle for supremacy, for control over the whole world. If you take the competition between China and US at this point, and then Russia has actually joined in. And obviously, because of common opposition to the US, China and Russia coming closer. So there is no ideological factor here. Who is an authoritarian country? Who is a democratic country? These are really absurd from my viewpoint.
Okay,
so,
Professor Zaman.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you. Thank you. Quite a good number of questions. Dr. Mahbub, very quickly, 2 minutes, please. We are running short of time.
Okay, Professor Tawfique, am I audible?
Yes. Sure.
Am I audible? Okay. Professor Takahara, you are a familiar name, and it's a pleasure for us, a privilege to listen to you. I have read your writings, and I must congratulate you for bringing certain issues which were not actually brought the way you brought it. For example, BRI projects are mainly for business, not development. You categorically mentioned once. This is crux of the problem. Things are yet to be unveiled. How BRI projects actually can cause tension, and even at the time it is needed. Say in Sri Lanka, what happened? We don't see the way Chinese aid came forward, the loan came forward it actually reciprocated when they were in a much bigger need. Second, I would definitely agree with you. Please don't think that we all are here to counter what you have said. I am with you. At least I can tell you, I believe that, yes, foreign policy of a country is framed by interests, not by the values. Sure, but values do have weightage and these must be maintained. For example, a closed country which is not accountable to its people, a country like China, where we see the emergence, this third term of assurance Xi Jinping has gotten, his speech is remarkable. He said, the world system is broken and China has answers. We are curious to know what are those answers. These are actually commonly known that when a country wants to fix up the world's problem, that country emerges as something not likable by others. Is it the case in Myanmar? Who is actually protecting the regime, the junta, military junta of Myanmar, despite their gross violation of human rights, committing genocide? Even the entire world is seemed to be crippled, is handicapped. The UN is handicapped because of the role of Russia and China. So this is not a good sign at all. And that's why the values definitely have meaning, and we must talk about it. When last point I want to focus upon. Yes, it is time to raise our voices, and there has to be a kind of third block, if I call it, as you rightly said, the new third world. Indeed, the emergence of a new third world is a must, because we cannot actually side with either way or that way. The both blocks are actually serving their own interest. So we'll look at the third world country's interest, and that's why we need to be actually organized. And I salute you for promoting that idea as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Mahbub. Before going to Professor Takahara, I just take a chance to raise the last question from my side about this Bangladesh-Japan relationship. And as you are fascinatingly showing these perception studies, the perception are so important that how people perceive one country in terms of foreign relationship. Even though Japan is the largest development partner for Bangladesh for many, many years, but the Japan's visibility is comparatively low if we compare the other countries. And people in Bangladesh, they see that, okay, Japan is our good friend, there is no doubt about it, but China is a savior. If we are in a crisis, China will probably rescue us. US was once very close, but now US-Bangladesh relation, a little bit tension. So, and you know, just I give you one example, a very fascinating example. Yesterday, Chinese ambassador was giving a press conference, and he categorically said, and very surprisingly, usually the Chinese ambassadors do not talk like this publicly. He said that if Bangladesh faces crisis, you know, we are now having some crisis with our reserve, and also energy crisis is going on. He said that if Bangladesh is in crisis for the energy security, China will not sit idle. It's a very strong kind of a statement from a Chinese ambassador in a public statement. And that's kind of the thing that they're creating the perception that China is a savior. If you're in a crisis, China is there to help you, not the US, not the Japan, not probably the other countries. So this perception game and this perception competition. So how do you see this, and why Japan is a little bit lagging behind, if I say, put it like this question? Thank you, sir. So floor to you. Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much. Let me try answer from the last question from Professor Tawfique. You know, the Japanese are so bad at PR and presentations. There is this value that, you know, virtue should be hidden. Virtue is most valuable when it's hidden. So, you know, you shouldn't brag about what you did for other people, or, you know, I don't know. But we are so bad at expressing what we have in our minds, for example. There's one famous episode that in the Meiji era, about 100 years ago, a very famous writer by the name of Soseki Natsume. He used to be a teacher of English in high school. And then in class, they came across the sentence, "I love you." So how should we translate this into Japanese? He asked his pupils, and the students said, "Well, I like you very much," in Japanese, you know. "I really want to, marry you," things like that. And teacher Natsume said, "No, you're all wrong. I love you in Japanese is, tonight the moon is blue and beautiful." That's how you should put it. So this could be okay in the Japanese society, in the Japanese community, but in the international world, you know, it won't go very far. So, you know, and the Chinese are genius, as I said, in coming up with concepts, with their presentations. So I always think that if the Japanese and the Chinese can cooperate, we'll be world #1. We'll be the strongest combination. But anyhow, that's such some explanation I hope I was able to make to Professor Tawfique's question. But we have to change. We have to learn from China how to improve our presentation abilities. Usually the speeches given by their national leaders and our national leaders are very different. It's so interesting to listen to the Chinese and it's so dull to listen to the Japanese Prime Minister. Well, Mr. Abe did well because he had a very good speech writer in English. I hope Kishida-san will find somebody very similar. Well, the next question about the Bay of Bengal, the Japanese policies about the Bay of Bengal, I defer to our ambassador who's going to address us in a few minutes' time. Chinese activities in the Bay of Bengal, to be honest, I am not very much aware. So I must learn from you what they're doing. So frankly, I'm not ready to answer that question tonight. And Japan's past, a very interesting question. You know, when I was in China some 10 years ago, I was having a conversation with a respected Chinese academic, politician. He used to be a secretary to the general secretary of the party, but a very respected person. He's very much respected in Japan too. And we were conversing very cordially. And at the end of the conversation, we had some time. So I asked, "But sir, you know, because China had just begun to send all these Coast Guard vessels to the Senkakus, your idea of a peaceful rise, your concept of the peaceful rise is fantastic. But what you are doing now around the Senkakus, aren't they contradictory to the concept of and the policy of a peaceful development and a peaceful rise?" And then this respected old guy, couldn't answer. He fell silent and he started trembling in the end. I think he remained silent for 30 or 40 seconds. And then when he finally opened his mouth, he severely criticized the Japanese about what they did during the war. Oh, he went on and on and on. And when this harangue was over, he was panting, you know, like that. And then there was another Japanese sitting next to me, and he added fuel on fire by saying that, well, what the Chinese are doing these days, many people say it's similar to what the Japanese were doing in the 1930s. And then he exploded again and started, you know, fiercely, vehemently criticizing what the Japanese did during the war, and panted again at the end and said, "The understanding of history by you two are completely wrong." I had not mentioned history at all, you know. And the fact is, I think, because of the defeat, you know, there was deep reflection amongst the Japanese, you know. If you had lived in Japan, Dr. Jashim Uddin would know very well how much the Japanese loathe military affairs, you know, how much pacifism has taken root in the Japanese society, maybe to an excessive extent. And therefore, we are suffering now when there's this real need to increase our defense budget and so on. It's not easy because the pacifism has been rooted, established amongst the minds of many Japanese. It's our identity now. And this served our neighbors very well in the post-World War II period, when Japan quickly was able to recover economically and started to grow big. We became the #2 economic power in the world, but a peaceful one. So Kissinger was wrong when he predicted many times that eventually Japan will become a military power. Yeah, that's what he kept on saying, but it hasn't happened. And because of this, our neighbors did not have to worry about a militaristic Japan again. And China has benefited a lot out of this. This is an objective fact. And all the Southeast Asian nations also suffered by imperialist Japan's invasion, right? And they had grudges into the 1970s. But after that, nowadays, there's no anti-Japanese sentiment amongst the Southeast Asian people. Because we made some effort in the 1970s, the Japanese were arrogant and they looked down on those Southeast Asian nation peoples. But then in the 1970s, we realized that this is not right. So the Fukuda Doctrine was issued, heart-to-heart relationship. We have to respect each other, treasure the dignity of the other nations. And this policy has been very successful, I would say. So it's only the Chinese and the Koreans who still have grudges about Japanese imperialism and the acts of war. So that's part of the answer to one of the questions. Indian Ocean, of course, China has the right to enjoy peaceful sea line of communication. But the Chinese thinking is, once our national power is big, we have to build a very powerful fleet and go out into the oceans and defend our own fleets. But that's not feasible. Even the United States has to have allies to maintain, a peaceful sea line of communications all around the world. So I tell my Chinese friends, I have a lot of Chinese friends, don't do it by yourself. You have to cooperate with the others. We understand your wish and your rights to defend your interests overseas and your sea lines of communication. We also share this value and this interest. So try not to do it by yourself and do it in cooperation with the others. Yes, values are also very important. We would like to talk about this a lot more with friends in Bangladesh and in other nations. What kind of a world do we want? Now at this point of time, we need to discuss ideas. Idealism can help us when we are in such a big chaotic situation, I think. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Takahara. We are now almost at the end of the program. At this point of the time, I would like to request Ambassador of Japan to Bangladesh, Ambassador Ito Naoki, to give his remarks. Ambassador.
Thank you very much, Professor Tawfique. So I'm Professor Atiqul, Vice-Chancellor, North-South University, Professor Takahara Akio, Graduate School of Law and Politics, University of Tokyo. So I'm really pleased that the Embassy and North-South University again co-hosted a wonderful academic seminar inviting the leading Japanese scholar. So last year we had Professor Tanaka Akihiko, and this year we are having Professor Takahara Akio. So I think the lecture Takahara Sensei provided was very much thought-provoking, very articulate. So we all, I'm sure, enjoyed and appreciated the way he presented his views on the basis of a very realistic analysis of the strategic environment and international relations. So particularly, he's a leading scholar on China. So I'm sure that all the participants have been benefited to listen to whatever he had to say about the current situation in China, Japan, China, bilateral relations, as well as those comparison of BRI and FOIP. I thought this constellation analogy was a very fascinating analogy, which could lead us to think further about how we should come up with further thought on this sort of policy framework and possibility of collaboration and compatibility between those policy concepts. As Professor Takahara touched upon, after this Russian invasion into Ukraine, I think while the international order, rule-based international order, is a very much in fluid situation right now. So Japanese Prime Minister said that we are at the watershed of history. So it is all the more important to maintain a rule-based international order to say make it more prevalent to the respect to international law, UN Charter, and so forth. In this context, I would really like to touch upon this Bangladesh is voting for the recent resolution at the United Nations General Assembly on the territorial integrity of Ukraine. So I think this clearly shows that Bangladesh has supported the principles, territorial integrity, UN Charter, and so forth. So traditionally, Bangladesh doesn't vote for a UN resolution which condemns any single country's act or policy. But this time, because of the Bangladesh emphasis on the principle of international law and UN Charter, Bangladesh voted for this United Nations General Assembly's resolution on the territorial integrity of Ukraine. So we had thought that this is a very, very important step taken by Bangladesh under the circumstances. So this clearly shows that we share the value, we share the importance of abiding by international law or UN Charter, rule-based international order. So there, as Professor Takahara said, that this is really reassuring that we can cooperate and collaborate with Bangladesh as a partner to realize free and open Indo-Pacific. So this year, Japan and Bangladesh are celebrating 50 years of diplomatic relations. So it is so timely that we have this lecture today. Professor Takahara is also Executive Director of JICA's Ogata Sadako Research Institute of Peace and Development. So JICA has been making lots of infrastructure projects. So in a way, JICA is enhancing the visibility of Japan in Bangladesh. So later in the year, in December, 𝐈𝐧𝐼 Special Economic Zone will be open to international investors. MRT Dhaka Line 6 will start commercial operation. So and after that, there will be this development of Matabari Deep Sea Port and Dhaka International Airport. I'm sure that those projects to be done by or to be completed by JICA will be a game changer for the development of Bangladesh. So there was a question about policy on Bay of Bengal. There's a very, very important initiative of cooperation between the two countries, Japan and Bangladesh, which is Big B, Bay of Bengal Industrial Growth Belt. This initiative was launched between the two prime ministers back in 2014, Honorable Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina and the late Shinzo Abe, then Prime Minister of Japan. So this is a very, very important initiative. We are going to continue to implement. So with this initiative, Japan will continue to develop infrastructure of the country, enhance the connectivity of Bangladesh, which will make Bangladesh play even more prominent role in terms of regional cooperation. So Bangladesh can be the hub of regional connectivity. So with the development of Mata Valley deep sea port, because we believe that Bangladesh should continue to play a very important role as the stabilizing power in the Bay of Bengal region. So occupying the very important geopolitical location, connecting South Asia and Southeast Asia. So I believe that sustainable development of Bangladesh will be a very important, not only for Bangladesh per se, but also Bay of Bengal region, as well as the entire Indo-Pacific region. So before concluding, I must say that Honorable Prime Minister will be visiting Japan the end of November, end of next month. So far, we have been dubbing our partnership comprehensive partnership, but surely that the Prime Minister's visit will provide opportunity for us to develop or elevate our comprehensive partnership into strategic one. So even on defense cooperation, so Japan and Bangladesh can get together and come up with some new types of cooperation, looking at another 50 years of our friendship and cooperation. But thank you once again for the North-South University for hosting this seminar. I hope that this event will be instrumental in further developing cooperation between this embassy and the university. And thank you again, Takahara Sensei. どうもありがとうございました。𝐏𝐫𝐤𝐚𝐜𝐿の場。
Okay, thank you very much, Ambassador Ito Naoki, and also for providing a kind of a guideline for the future partnership of Bangladesh and Japan cooperation. And as we are looking forward for it, as I was saying that Japan is a long-standing friend and a proven friend for Bangladesh development, and so many development projects, as you are rightly mentioning, that are coming out because of the Japanese partnership. And those will be very visible within the beginning of next year or end of this year. And we are very thankful to also Ambassador Ito Naoki, because so many occasions he supported us. He was one of our resource person even in the certificate courses and many occasions. So thank you, sir, for being with us, and hope to have more cooperation with the Japanese Embassy and North-South University. I just want to mention that as before, we will also try to develop a working paper out of the discussion of today, and jointly we'll publish it for our students and others. Before we go to our session of the chair, I would just to let you know one information, that there is a doc file being shared in the chat box. This is a kind of a just evaluation form, that how did you feel about this joint seminar, if you have any suggestion for the future improvement, all these things. So you can download it, and request that you all submit the form. It's a Google form. So I will now request our Vice-Chancellor, Professor Atiqul Islam, the chair of the session, to give his remarks. So over to you, sir.
Thank you, Professor Sheikh Tawfique. I come to these seminars basically to learn, and this has been a very significant learning exercise for me. I must say, without any sense of exaggeration or flattery, that I enjoyed Professor Takahara Akio's presentation immensely. While 66% of vital oil shipments of India, Japan, and China. And 33% of the world's bulk cargo passes through the Indian Ocean and the Bay of Bengal. Bay of Bengal is an extremely important strategic area and economic interest area for Japan, for India, for us, and for China as well. I think in the concept that Professor Takahara has floated, FOIP, I'm becoming convinced that this is the kind of approach that is needed. You have on the one side, one party that basically asserts its right on everything in the world. And then you have on the other side, 3-4 countries banding together to stop it from doing everything. It's totally confrontational. I think what Professor Takahara has said, the FOIP and BRI has some overlap, may not be in all aspects, but in important aspects of economic cooperation, which is it's the foremost important thing. Sea lanes of the world do not belong to anyone, even if they pass through within the territorial waters of a country. You should not stop, because what is the sense in putting obstacles to world trade? It's basically reducing your own potential and damaging others' economic interests for no good to yourself. So if everyone took an enlightened view that is propagated in FOIP, I think would be a very, very good solution to the whole problem. I have been to at least 10 different seminars and conferences and workshops on Belt and Road Initiative, international, what is it called? Long time ago, before COVID, so it's long time ago. My memory is not as good. International Silk Road Academy of Sciences, and all sorts of things. These are good ideas, provided they are not intended for hegemonic purposes, for dominating purposes. I think the amount of energy that people are willing to put in frictions with others, in moments of rage, when people lose their rationality, is unbelievable. If people just sit down, thought, talked, not cut lines of communication, I think people can find a good solution, because there's nothing to monopolize about the world's sea lanes. There's nothing to monopolize the airspace of the world. There's nothing to monopolize in the whole space area. So, and I liked when Professor Takahara Akio said that it won't be possible for one country to dominate the whole area. You've got to go into teams with other countries. The moment you talk about teams, you're talking about, not only the big powers, but also countries like Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, and everyone in it. And that would be so much a better solution than what has been going on now. You are with us or against us kind of attitude. Okay, we 3-4 here, there's one there. So make up your mind, which side are you on? And then, accordingly we'll deal with you. That's not a good attitude, really. So I would, before I forget, I would also show my gratitude, express my gratitude to Ambassador Ito Naoki. He always places his country's perspective on things in a very rational way. I've heard him before, and he has been promoting during his time the economic relationship between Bangladesh and Japan. All our major projects, Japan has been the main engine there, but Japan is not doing it by itself, everything, also sharing the projects with some other countries, which is a good cooperative approach that is helpful for the host country also. So we appreciate it, Ambassador Naoki, and we also appreciate the JICA's role in the strategic development of Bangladesh in more than one way. And I basically say that North-South University is pleased to work with a number of Japanese universities, which may be seen as proxy for JICA in imparting Japanese lessons here, in incidentally organizing engineers and others to go and work in Japan, which is a win-win situation for both of us. So North-South is very willing to expand that area of cooperation, and we enjoy interacting with your people. We enjoy hosting some of those joint projects, and once again I thank Professor Takahara and Ambassador Naoki for being present in this very constructive seminar on a rather divided issue. So on behalf of North-South University, I once again thank all the participants, and I've been thanking Professor Sheikh Tawfique every 2-3 weeks. So those thanks are understood. I don't have to even speak. Same thing with Professor Jashim Uddin and other staff of North-South University. We are here to promote healthy debates, to promote free speech, and this has been a good example of what North-South does best. Thank you all. Bye now.
Thank you, sir. And as always, your encouragement is always a kind of a driving force for us to do this kind of the events more and more. And I would now just not going to summarize because we are already running. It's almost close to 2 hours. So I will just give one concluding comments. And that is basically, we learned a lot from Professor Takahara. As a fascinating discussion, and I can understand because he's also a China expert. So he was not only talking from Japanese perspective, and that's why it was so broad and comprehensive. And from that, we can summarize that a peaceful coexistence is possible in Indo-Pacific. That I can summarize. And so what we have learned that in Indo-Pacific, there is no Indo-Pacific without China, because China is a major country geographically placed in Pacific, and there is no Indo-Pacific without India also. So India, China, Japan all can work together and can build a peaceful Indo-Pacific. And so BRI and this open and free Indo-Pacific can be complemented. I know it sounds idealistic in this confrontational world when the war is going on. Probably nobody would love to dream about it. But that is the possibility, and that's the idea that Professor Takahara was saying, that we academicians can float the ideas, which might be kind of a hypothetical in today, but might be realistic after 10 years. So with that positive note, I conclude today's event, and by thanking all our participants, and special thanks to Professor Takahara, to our ambassador, Ito Naoki, and also Dr. Jashim Uddin, and also finally our Honorable Vice-Chancellor, Professor Atiqul Islam, for giving his valuable time. He always said that when you invite me, there's a 2 hours time but I'm sure that Sir said he enjoys that a lot, and that gives her lots of motivation. So by that, thank you all and have a very nice weekend ahead. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
ありがとうございました。
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 Thank you. Bye.
Leave.